Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy. You're reading with Jimmy. Today, we're going to understand Guy de Maupassant's The Mask. This is an analysis by yours truly, Jimmy. Ready? Well, sometimes I get emails saying that they don't understand Maupassant's endings of his stories, that they come too abruptly, or they make no sense. So when this story ends, the wife asks the doctor who brought her husband home, quote, "Would you mind giving me your address? If he gets worse, I'll come and fetch you." And then it's over. Did you feel let down at that ending when you read this story with me? What was this story all about anyway? It's an old man who passes out on the dance floor? The hell kind of story is that? And I'm sure some of you are asking yourself, why did you take the time to read this with me? Right? Well, that's why you're here, to understand the analysis of it. I'm going to tell you why it's important that you took your time. Let me remind you. We read the classics only on my website and the YouTube channel because classical literature is how we learn how others lead their lives and how to lead our own. What do I mean by that? In classical literature, you get into the depths of a person. You get to see behind the person, inside the person. And the only person in real life that you get to do that with is yourself. You can't really see in other people's heads. They don't have glass heads. You don't know when they're fibbing, being truthful, do you? If you do, you're a better person than Jimmy. Through first and third person narration, then, characters reveal their inner workings. People, if you live 200 years, you might not meet these people. In telling us about, I met a couple the other day at an event, Tim and Stella, one from Canada. She was from England. They met. She moved to Canada as a young girl. They met. He worked for a big company, automotive company. It was a wonderful experience, but I still don't know his inner workings, her inner workings. They seemed like nice people, just as I'm sure we seemed, my wife and I, like nice people. But you never know. So in telling us about their own lives, like in The Mask, they tell us about ourselves, our secret selves, that we may not want to admit to ourselves, like this guy, who didn't seem to like the fact that he was getting old. It happens to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, you cannot outrun Father Time. So you see, reading someone like Maupassant takes effort. Reading all classical literature, ladies and gentlemen, takes effort. It does. But it's effort well worthwhile. And if you haven't figured that out yet, that's what you do when you read with me. You extend effort. And by the way, so do I. Which is why I offer you this analysis at the end of each reading for your consideration. Look at that. Jimmy misspelled something while he was writing. Holy cow. Learning about yourself takes a lot of effort. And if you want to know the truth, once you start that journey of self-discovery called introspection, you never really stop. I mean, you could stop at any time. But once you start, why would you stop? Besides, you keep changing, which, by the way, is why you can keep reading and rereading classical literature, because each time you'll get something more out of it, something different out of it, just like with The Mask. So let's tackle Maupassant's The Mask, if you read it with me. If not, please go back and reread it with me. You know, you can read it on your own, but that's why I read the classics with you, to give you the cadence, the rhythm, my interpretation of the words. And you might see what it might reveal about ourselves and the people around us. So what happened? Well, there was a fancy dress ball. We learn in the first sentence from the third person narrator who's telling us the story. Remember, in Jimmy's world, narration is very important. It's important to understand the narrator's position in the story. And this one, the narrator is outside the story. He's not a character inside the story, Like in A Farewell to Arms, Lieutenant Henry is inside the story, narrating to us. So this is designated the third-person narrator. And by the way, it's not Guy de Maupassant. Some people, well, Jimmy, why isn't it? It's third person. How do you know it's not him? Well, he's just the writer. Writers are never the narrators unless they're writing essays like Emerson or Thoreau, which are on this website. The first person from the third person is a powerful one. The first sentence, pardon me. The first sentence sets the tone. And remember, Jimmy tells you all the time, whenever we read classical literature, the first paragraph, the first words, the first sentence, the first delivers the impact of the story. So here's what the first sentence was. There was a fancy dress ball at the Elysée Montmartre that evening to celebrate mid-Lent, and the crowd was pouring into the brightly lit passage that led to the dance hall like water into a lock. Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that spark your... Jimmy, I don't know. I never saw water going into a lock. Well, Google it. What does water look like when it's going into a lock? You have to remember in classical literature, the writer, Maupassant, chooses his words for the third-person narrator very carefully, or first person, but in this case, third. Every word means something. Fancy dress ball, it's not just the ball, it's a fancy dress ball. And Elysée Montmartre may be something famous in France. We don't necessarily need to know what that is, but it's a place, right? That evening, so it's evening to celebrate mid-Lent. Who celebrates mid-Lent these days? Well, Jimmy, that's why I don't want to read this. It's old stuff. No. You want to read it because you want to put yourself in the situation. So forget what Lent, if you don't even know what, you don't even know what Lent is, look it up. You don't have to be a practicing Catholic to understand Lent. And the crowd, that's the point, was pouring, the word pouring. That's what water does. You pour water. You see how they're careful about the words they pick? So the narrator paints a picture that we can use our imagination on. Remember, our imagination is the most powerful tool that we have. And that's partly why social media screws it up. They give you all these images. They take away from your imagination. Ladies and gentlemen, you can imagine a dragon worse than anything you've seen in The Hobbit. I'm just telling you. So it's a loud ball. It's filled with people, all kinds of people. The narrator tells us that there is, quote, an irresistible desire to jump about, to keep warm, and have fun, which slumbers deep in the human animal. That's another indication. Who talks like that? The third-person narrator does. He's giving you an insight, right, into human nature. Fun slumbers in the human animal. Slumbers, sleeps. And isn't that the truth? Don't we all want to have fun? Of course, that depends on how you define fun. Well, in any case, it's an important statement from our third-person narrator. It's an observation, and if the story is going to make sense, you have to believe it. That's what third-person narrator is all about in classical literature. If you don't believe what the third-person narrator who's outside the story is telling you, well, then why read the story? None of it will make sense. The narrator is telling us that we have a desire to have fun that's deep in us. Fun. An important word and a keen observation by the narrator. But as I was saying, what is fun? Remember, defining your words in Jimmy's world, in any world, is very important to understanding yourself. You remember the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland, which is on this website. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, when she meets the caterpillar. Who are you? Very important question. So, is fun playing a video game? Is fun watching football on television? Is fun hanging out? What is fun? Reading classical literature isn't just fun. I hate to tell you now if you haven't realized it, or already. It's hard work, but work can be fun. What the heck are you talking about, Jimmy? I'm talking about work can be fun. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, you better keep reading with Jimmy. Keep reading, because reading classical literature is not fun. It's hard work, right? Do you find work fun? If not, you're probably doing the wrong thing called work. If you go, oh, every day I gotta get up and I gotta go to work. If that's your attitude, boy, you're not having fun. I know people, myself included, who get up every day and say, "This is gonna be a great day. I can't wait to work." I don't know. Boring, serious. These are opposites of fun. So if you're doing something that's boring, what the heck are you doing? You know, life is short. Life is short. Are you playing video games? Really? Well, Jimmy, are you saying you never played video games? I didn't say that. I haven't played a video game in 10 years. Hey, Jimmy, what about football games? You never been to a football game? Of course I've been to a football game. But I haven't been to a football game in over 10. I haven't been in a long time, 20 years. Because it's not fun for me. I don't care. Well, Jimmy, I care about it. Well, that's great. Good for you. I'm only interested in helping you understand classical literature. Why? Because it's going to help you lead your life better. Because you'll see how other people lead their lives and what to do about your life. Learning about yourself, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to tell you, it's really not a lot of fun. I went through this introspection, still go through it. But once you get comfortable with who you are, what you are, why you are, I'm telling you right now, there's nothing like it. So, in life, we are all first-person narrators. We're inside the story. We're in the world, right? We listen to people, we talk to people, we do things, we have things done to us. And yet we never really know why. Why did I lose that client? Why did my mom get mad at me? Blah, 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 right? How or who? We never know why unless we really, really, really think about it. My mom got mad at me because I was a jerk. One incident when I was a small kid going to grammar school, she bought me a new school bag. We carried school bags in those days, really like leather briefcases. And so it was snowing in Chicago one day, beautiful snow. And it was one of those wet snows that freezes when it hits the ground. And I was taking my new school bag and rolling it like a bowling ball on the ice. Right? Oh, this is fun. Holy mackerel, look at this school bag travel. Wow. And I do it again and again on the way home. And by the time I got home, the school bag unfortunately showed the marks of having traveled on the ice for quite a while. And my mom saw that and she said, what the hell did you do? And I told her, and boy, was she mad. She didn't hit me. Not for that. But she got really, really mad. Really mad. And I couldn't understand it because I was having fun. Why is my mom getting mad at me for having fun? Of course, as time went on, I realized, well, she paid a lot of money for this school bag. And I just wrecked it, right? So reading classical literature helps you lead a better life. Now, I'm not saying that school bags have anything to do with the mask, but finding out who you are, what you are, why you are, does. And in this case, the narrator is outside the story, which in real life we never, never, never meet. There's no one that's the third person narrator telling us stuff. So, in The Mask, there's a dancer. He was a thin man dressed as a dandy and wearing a handsome varnish mask with a fair mustache and a curly wig. He looked rather like a wax dummy, a curious caricature of a charming young man in the fashion plates. And he was dancing. Fashion plates, you can look that up. Those are plates that are sometimes etched with drawings. He seemed rusty in comparison with the others as he tried to imitate their capers, as stiff and clumsily as a mongrel playing with greyhounds. Sarcastic cheers egged him on, and drunk with enthusiasm, he leaped about so frantically that all of a sudden, carried away by a wild rush, he ran straight at the wall of onlookers, which opened to let him through, then closed again around the dancer's motionless body lying flat on his face. Wow. A doctor attended to him and tried. I'm going to pause this for a moment where I said the doctor. Sorry about that. A doctor attends to him and tries with a lot of trouble to undo the mask, quote, which ingeniously attached it to the edges of the wig and enclosed the entire head in a rigid framework. When they finally get it off, they find, quote, the face of an old man, pale, worn out, thin, wrinkled. Look at all those beautiful words to describe an old man. He could have just said an old man, but he didn't, right? The narrator didn't. He said pale, worn out, thin, and wrinkled, so that your imagination can actually start painting that picture, right? The shock to those who had carried in the curly-headed young dancer, why? Because he had a mask on, was so great that nobody laughed and nobody said a word. It was shock, right? That underneath that mask, that young mask, is this old guy. Speaking with difficulty, he tells the doctor where he lives. The doctor takes him home, and that's where we meet the masked man's wife. And when the doctor asks her why he does this at his age, the wife begins a tale, which is the heart of the story. Quote, well, if you must know, it's so people will think that he's young under his mask, so that women will still take him for a gay dog and whisper dirty things in his ear so that he can rub up against them and smell their scent and their paint and powder, which makes his wife sick. It's a story inside a story. The wife is telling us a story through the third-person narrator's voice. Do you understand that? This is a great, great, great technique. When you have a story with third-person narrators, they often rely on the characters inside to start narrating to give the illusion, maybe that's not the right word, but it is, of a first-person narrator. Because we have to believe the third-person narrator. So when you tell someone about a friend of yours, my friend cheated me out of $50. Well, when you say something about that, you're inside the story talking about your friend. There is no third-person narrator to verify what you're saying. The person you're saying it to, or the person overhearing what you're saying, has to believe you, or he doesn't. Like with Tim and Stella, I had to believe or not believe what he told me about the 30 years he spent at this major auto company. I will never know if it was a truthful statement or a fib. You don't know. How do you know that? Unless you worked with him at that big auto company, right? You don't know. You have to believe people. And the difference between a third-person narrator in classical literature and a first-person narrator inside the story is that the third-person narrator is always reliable. You have to believe his story, or the rest of the story will not make sense. Whereas first-person narrators, you can sometimes catch them in a fib, or it's colored by their prejudices, their narration. You understand? And there's plenty of examples. Travel is So Broadening, which is on this website, comes to mind. There's every example of first-person narrator. Ernest Hemingway's Farewell to Arms. They are all first-person, not all, but these first-person narrated stories helps you understand what your own position in the universe is. So anyway, the doctor finds out that their names, Madeline and Ambrosi, and what the old man did for a living. He was a hairdresser. Quote, says his wife. He was the chief assistant at Martel's, but an assistant like they never had before. An artist earning 10 francs an hour. Yes, all the smartest actresses had their hair done by Ambrosi and gave him a fortune in tips. Aha! He was not just a hairdresser, he was a good hairdresser. Then she tells the story of how she found gray hairs on her husband one day. I put this right in here and I clipped it, and you can go back and reread it. But we're going to touch on it briefly because it's very revealing about her character. I found you've got some gray hairs, she tells him. He was so annoyed. Now remember, who's she talking to? The doctor. Because the doctor is listening. He's a good listener. And he's amused by what she's telling him. He was so annoyed, he sat up with a start. And if I tickled him, and he glared at me and he said, "You're lying." "No, I'm not," she said. "You've got 4 on your left temple." He jumped out of bed and ran to the mirror, but he couldn't find them. So I showed him the first one that I spotted, the one that was lowest down, the little curly one. And I said, it's not surprising seeing the life you led. 2 years from now, you'll be finished. Wow, wow. Don't forget, this is a story about a guy who doesn't want to be old. And what is she telling him? 2 years from now, you're going to be old. Imagine this. "Monsieur, I never spoke a truer word. 2 years later, you wouldn't have recognized him." How quickly a man changes. He was still a good-looking fellow, but he was losing his freshness. And the women weren't running after him anymore. Now imagine her. She's telling the doctor that women used to ran after her husband. What a relationship. "Oh, I had a hard time of it in those days. He really put me through it. I couldn't do a thing, not a thing. He left his trade for the hat business, and he lost a pile of money. And then he tried being an actor, and he wasn't any good at that. And then he started going to dance halls. Luckily, he'd had enough sense to put a bit of money aside, and that's what we live on. It's enough, but not much. And to think that at one time he had a small fortune." And then the doctor leaves. So it's really a sad story, isn't it? Guy doesn't want to accept getting old. The wife who stood by him all those years while he fooled around. And you don't have to feel sorry for this guy and his wife, or do you? Do you? Think about that. Plot and Aristotle. I always like to bring in Aristotle and plot. Here's a footnote that you've seen before if you've analyzed books with me that I read. You can pause me and read it again if you'd like. But Aristotle is important to understanding it because he was a smart cookie. According to Aristotle, tragedy has 6 elements: plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. And Aristotle says the first 2, plot and character, are primary. They are. The most important is plot. And what is plot? It's the representation of human action, which this story does have. There's a dance ball. He's dancing like crazy. He falls down. He gets exhausted. He has to be taken home, put into bed. The wife tells the doctor the story of their life together. So there's a lot of things going on in The Mask, right? It's not like other first-person, third-person narrated stories that we see. So plots, according to Aristotle, are simple or complex. The Mask, in Jimmy's opinion, and you can send me emails, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, if you disagree. I think it's a complex plot. Why? Because of the actions and the dialogue of the old man and his wife. They drive the plot forward. So the plot should have a beginning, middle, and an end. And that's what people email me about when I read Maupassant stories. And they seem, not everybody, but they seem to just end. Well, no, they end because they're over. The third-person narrator stops narrating because the story's done. And in this case, it's the wife saying to the doctor, if it gets worse, give me your card, I'll call you, I'll send for you. So the mask, in my opinion, meets this criteria. It takes place in a single day. But like I asked you, what is the plot? The old man exerts himself to the point of passing out. You call that a plot, Jimmy? Well, simple plot and complex plot. The simple plot represents a change of fortune, which does not come about through reversal of the situation and recognition. The reversal of the situation and a recognition by the person, a person in the story, of his flaw. Hamlet, you can think of Hamlet or other stories, right? Lieutenant Henry never recognizes his flaw, right? So someone might say that novel is a simple plot. Well, I don't think so. The first question to ask on the mask is, who is the hero? Is there a hero? You know, when we hear the word hero, we think of someone who overcomes bad, evil, right? Is there a reversal of a situation here? Does that old man in bed, lying in bed, ever realize that, he's old and he must accept his age? He doesn't do much talking, this guy, right? It's the people around him that carry the action forward. Madeline plays a role as his wife, the doctor who cares for him. And for a complex plot, there has to be a recognition and reversal. Is there? Is there? I told you just a minute ago that Jimmy thinks, right, that this is a complex plot, simple or complex. The Mask is a complex plot. I was testing you. It's not. There's no reversal. There's no recognition. It's a simple plot. Aha. You see the difference? The old man never recognizes his flaw. That is getting old a flaw? I don't think so. Not realizing you're getting old or trying to stay young when you're old. That's going to be bad things that happen to him, like, falling down after trying to look young and dancing like a fool. Does Ambrosi realize he's getting old? No. Does Madeline stop loving him? Did she ever love him? I think she did. Did she ever stop loving him? No. Well, then why does she torture him by telling him he's getting old when, in fact, that's the one thing he doesn't want to do? You see how complex this is? Is it a simple plot or is it a complex plot? Jimmy, you're vacillating. No, I'm asking you to figure it out. I can see both points of view. And if you're wondering the difference between comedy and tragedy, Aristotle says tragedy deals with serious, important, virtuous people. Comedy with less virtuous people. Is The Mask a comedy? Did you laugh at this guy? Or when his wife was telling the story? Or did you feel sad? Or did you not feel anything? Well, Jimmy, I didn't feel a thing. Well, go back and reread it. Maybe you need some introspection. Because, ladies and gentlemen, classical literature requires empathy, sympathy, understanding, just like people in real life require all those things. Aristotle cautions his readers to understand the characters presented in comedy as more ridiculous than evil. Is there anyone evil in here? Lysistrata, which is on this website, is a comedy. I encourage you to read it. It's a great, great, great Greek comedy. And it's not written by Sophocles, right? It's written by Aristophanes. Oh, I already corrected myself here, right? I read so many classics, I get confused sometimes. Aristophanes wrote Lysistrata. Sophocles wrote Oedipus Rex, which may or may not yet be on this website. This Mask story is not a comedy, is it? It's not really a tragedy, or is it? It may start out kind of funny, but it's a sad story about someone who doesn't accept change. You know anybody like that? Do you know anybody that doesn't want to accept change? Many people come to my mind. So let's touch on character for a moment. Aristotle said character was the second most important thing, and character should be believable, and that their attributes should conform to what would be expected for similar people in real life. Did you believe these people? Ambrosi, Madeline, the doctor, did you believe them? I did. He also believed there should be a balance between good and bad. The mask has only three characters, the doctor, Ambrosi, and Madeline. Aristotle said that moral character determined by the structure of individual acts. That's how you determine the moral character of a character in a book or a play. And how in this story, all three act according to their moral characters. Madeline loves her husband, yet she's kind of mean to him. Why did she marry him? Quote, otherwise he would have ditched me like the others. I've been his wife and his housekeeper and everything else, anything he wanted. Oh, the times he made me cry. Though I never let him see me cry, because he used to tell me all about his affairs. Me, monsieur, never thinking how it hurt me to listen. Can you imagine that? Did Ambrosi know he was being cruel to his wife by telling her about all his affairs? What kind of guy does that? An insensitive one for sure. And why did she stick with him all those years? Why did she stick with him when in fact he is kind of psychologically abusing her? You know anybody like that? She stays with him despite him cheating. Why? What is love all about, right? Does Ambrosi feel anything for her? Quote, at times like that, monsieur, it was like somebody crushed all my feeling for him with a stone. At times like what? When he would tell her about his affairs. Listen to this woman. It hurt. It hurt something awful. But he didn't realize that. He didn't know. Did he? She's saying to the doctor, and we're listening to her tell the doctor, that Ambrosi never knew that he was hurting her. Did he? You see what I'm talking about? With really understanding complexity of human behavior? He just had to tell somebody about it, to brag about it, to show how the ladies loved him. And I was the only one he could tell, the only one. So I had to listen to him and drink it all up like poison. Ow, what a powerful statement. Just think about the relationship of these two people. Stop for a moment and think. This guy's telling his wife all about the affairs. She's just listening to him, and she describes it like drinking poison. Oh my God, do you know anybody like that? I've seen relationships like this. I've seen them, and I think some of you have seen them. So he causes her pain, and she accepts it. Why? She says that he couldn't know how much he hurt her. Why didn't she tell him how much he hurt her? Do you think he didn't know he was hurting her? See how complex relationships are? The finding of the first gray hair is interesting. She has compassion for him for sure. And yet, when revealed, that first gray hair, that little gray hair, the four gray hairs, boy, that gave her pleasure. Why? Because maybe he'd stop fooling around. Reminds me of the Knight's Tale in the Canterbury Tales. Read it. Aristotle believed that characters cannot act without reference to the situation in which they're placed. He also believed a passive character would produce no action and no drama. And the characters in this story act with reference to the situation they're in. Ambrosi faints, the doctor helps him. Madeline tells her story to the doctor. It's a story of what the past does to the present. The images of who you were impact who you are now. Do you understand that? Who changes in this story? Who really changes in this story? Nobody. There's no change going on. But yet, the interactions, holy mackerel. That's why Maupassant probably ended it where he ended it. That's probably why some of you are not satisfied with the endings. Because they just stop. right? He leaves it up to you to figure it out. In Aristotle's concept of tragedy, thought refers to the underlying idea or message of the action and plot of the play, representing the theme of the tragedy, pardon me. It's a deeper meaning to the audience and is meant to contemplate and understand from the tragic hero's downfall and the events surrounding it. But there is no tragic hero in this mask, is there? Isn't Ambrosi's inability to accept his situation kind of tragic? Or is it ridiculous? Come on, everybody gets old. Why doesn't this guy just accept it? What the hell kind of story is this? Well, do you have compassion? Compassion is the feeling of sympathy and sorrow for someone's misfortune, combined with a strong desire to alleviate their suffering. Think about that. Should I read it again? It's feeling sympathy combined with a strong desire to help alleviate the suffering, to help. Did you feel compassion for this guy? For his wife? For the doctor? Do you ever feel compassion for anybody? Does the doctor feel compassion? He took him home. I think he did. Does the wife? Well, yeah, except when she starts narrating the story of how she tortured him with the gray hair. But then again, he's been torturing her. This is a story about people torturing each other? Jimmy, that doesn't happen in real life. You think? How long have you lived? What have you seen? People don't torture each other psychologically? Please. Have you looked around yourself? Alleviating suffering means helping. How does Madeline help Ambrosi? How does the doctor help? Does Ambrosi have any compassion in him? Except for perhaps himself. Who's the selfish one in this story? You know who I'm talking. Are you? Oh, Jimmy, I'm not selfish. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? And what about masks? Ladies and gentlemen, we all wear masks, don't we? Sometimes our jobs define us. I worked for director of marketing for a long time, and I would often ask, does the chair that she occupied, the director of marketing, define her, or does she define herself? And it was the chair, of course, the power chair, right? You're a director of marketing, that's a power chair, and that helps define you. So your job often defines you. But people who have done introspection define themselves. They're comfortable doing anything. As they say, they're comfortable in their own skin. But not Ambrosi, is he? He puts a mask on. And we all put on a mask sometimes, don't we? Our self it's just not one thing either, is it? Are you just one? Are you that simple that you're just one thing, or are you many things? You're a husband, you're a worker, you're a wife. You know what I'm saying? You have different roles. You're a father, you're a grandfather, you're a child. You have different roles, and people see you differently than you see yourself. And if you have 3 people you're friends with, they all see you differently than you see yourself. And you see them differently than they see themselves. What a complex world we live in. We're a collection of selves that emerge in different situations and roles. We change masks, so to speak. This is one of the great titles of this story. What people perceive us to be. In other words, when people see you, when people look at you, what do they perceive? A jerk? A powerful person? I'm thinking of now one person that is a catalyst that when people perceive him, they either hate him or they love him. We're getting into something really deep here, aren't we? But the fact is that what is the mask is all about. It's about the masks we all wear. Quote, the doctor had stood up and was getting ready to go. He had nothing more to say to this strange couple. Did the doctor have compassion? Well, I would say he listened to the story for a long time. He didn't just drop him off and leave. And Madeline asks him to be available if things change for the worse. He's a doctor, and he's trained to help. And we never really know what the doctor's true feelings are. That doesn't come through the third-person narrator's narration, except once in a while he'll say that the doctor was amused listening to them, right? Pardon me. Okay. He's a doctor. He's trained to help. We never know. Judged by the doctor's diary, he was beginning to enjoy himself. Remember when he wrote that? The third-person narrator? He was beginning to enjoy himself. Remember that? If he was good, yeah. When she asked him if he was a good-looking man, and yet he was surprised to see that she was married to him. He questions her. He had growing interest during the dialogue. He did, after all, take him home. So he was enjoying himself. He was learning. Did he have compassion? A little. I mean, he spent time with him. Jimmy worked for a director of marketing for many years and used to wonder if the title made her. I mentioned this. And often titles themselves are the mask. Vice President, President, CEO, Chief Kahuna. And when they shape our perceptions of the person, the title does. The president of a bank wants people to know he's the president of a bank. Otherwise, he's just another person. I know many presidents of banks, and this one in particular, he asked me one day, why don't you want people to know that you own a business? Because I have no titles in my company. There were no titles. I just had my name, address, phone number, etc. No titles. Never had titles. And I told him, I said, because I don't want people to know, then they'll treat me, like any Tom, Dick, and Harriet, right? You don't want to shape people's perceptions of you unless you want to, right? You don't want to say, I'm a founder of my company. The masks we put on, when do we take them off? Well, I can tell you, you take them off at night when you're alone in your bed and you face yourself as you drift off into sleep. Tonight, when you go to bed and you take your mask off, there was a great Twilight Zone also with people with masks. I think it was called The Masks. And the dying guy had all of his heirs put on these masks, which actually made their faces really grotesque. It's a famous Twilight Zone. In any case, when you go to bed tonight and you take off your mask and you drift off into sleep, your real self emerges in your dreams. Do you dream? Nah, Jimmy, I never dream. Of course you dream. You just don't remember your dreams. You dream every night. 2, 3, sometimes 4 times. And your dreams really is where you sort yourself out. The people in your dreams are really extensions of you. You should study dreams sometimes. We can go on and on and on about this, but I'm not going to. But it does remind me again of Alice in Wonderland when the caterpillar says, "Who are you?" Ladies and gentlemen, who are you? Who are you? Well, you've been reading with Jimmy. Learn more about Guy de Maupassant's stories by watching our ongoing videos. We've got a lot of Maupassant. It's one of Jimmy's favorite authors. Great storyteller. And be sure to visit other classics on the website, including the analysis. And if you have questions, please email me, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Thanks for coming. And please, if you're interested, go back and reread it. And remember, who are you?